Gonna take my body down to Mulberry Hill, where the picking is good. They say you get your fill.
Who hasn't heard the nursery rhyme? Here we go round the mulberry bush. I used to recite it countless times, never realizing the bush was actually a tree which played an important part in world civilizations. Thousands of years ago, the Chinese Empress Xi Liangqi began the manufacture of silk in her country. She used silkworms, whose sole source of nourishment was the leaf of the white mulberry tree. China dominated the silk industry and continues to do so today. Many centuries later, my city became an important center for domestic silk industry. In the 1830s, entrepreneur Samuel Whitmarsh purchased property in the Florence section of the city and built a huge cocoonery to manufacture silk. Entire hillsides were planted with white mulberries, since its leaves were the favorite food of silkworms. By the early 1900s, locally owned Corticelli Silk Company emerged as a leading manufacturer of silk thread in the eastern United States. Their advertisements of kittens playing with spools of silk became known worldwide and appeared in many national magazines. Eventually, harsh winters, disease, and high labor costs resulted in the failure of the silk business. But the mulberry trees adapted to their new home, and their descendants thrive as living monuments to the time when this area was a leader in silk manufacture. Reminders of that past remain in the names of our streets: Mulberry, Corticelli, Fruit, and as the name of a multi-purpose building. Even my city's official seal has a border design of silkworm moths, mulberry leaves, and fruit to commemorate this enterprise. There are many varieties of mulberry trees. Two types grow in my area: the native red and the more plentiful, at least here, the Asian white. There's also a black variety, but it's not found here. Young trees have a mostly smooth orangey bark with scattered raised lenticels. As trees mature, their bark becomes brownish-gray and has ridges. Although this distinctive relative of the fig tree is usually known for its berries, its flower catkins and tender unfolding leaves are edible when prepared properly. White mulberries often leaf out and produce flowers before red ones do. Flowers emerge in mid-May, at the same time as leaves begin to unfurl, and after danger of frost has passed. These appear on inconspicuous green catkins. To determine a flower's sex, look at its catkins. Male ones are slender, narrow, and longer than the tinier, wider female ones, which have little protuberances that look like curly insect antennae. The males remind me of hanging caterpillars. These catkins are usually on separate trees, but to complicate things, both male and female flowers may be found on the same tree. Some botanists suggest that flowers may be gender fluid. First they're male, then female, then change back again. All I want to do is find trees with female flowers so I can return later to harvest some berries. In this clip, the smaller female catkins are in the center, surrounded by the larger males. I use a few of these non-fruiting males in salads. I may be imagining this, but the male flower catkins have a slight aftertaste of mulberries. Males like these, which have pollinated, aren't worth trying, as they've lost their crunchiness. I don't bother with female ones for the obvious reason I want to eat the fruits they'll eventually produce. Mulberry leaves are serrated. They can be oval, lobed like mittens, or heart-shaped, and it's not unusual for all of them to appear on the same tree. Usually, but not always, leaves of white varieties are smaller, more glossy and varied than the larger, duller, somewhat rough, and often unlobed red ones. Some people mistakenly identify leaves of the linden tree for those of the red mulberry. Don't worry, it doesn't matter, since leaves of both trees are edible. Another tree sometimes confused with mulberry is sassafras. It too has several different shaped leaves all on one tree, which are edible when young. Sassafras leaves have a spicy fragrance when bruised. Those of mulberry do not. A word of caution: mulberry leaf stems exude a small amount of inedible white sap, which might cause skin irritation in some people. Newly emerged leaves taste like spinach. The key thing to remember is to use very young leaves, as some people have complained of headaches and hallucinations from eating older ones. Collect a lot of leaves, since 2 cups fresh ones cook down to 1/4 cup. Simmer them for about 10 minutes. Discard the cooking water and season with butter, tamari sauce, and sautéed sliced garlic. I add whatever I have to other cooked vegetables at the last minute before serving. Perhaps it might be easier to use a few uncooked leaves in salads or as a lettuce substitute in sandwiches. Tea made from the dried leaves of the white variety supposedly contains medicinal compounds which may help suppress blood sugar levels. Berries ripen in mid to late June and consist of many small ones fused together into an aggregate fruit. Each is formed from one of the individual flowers from the female catkins. Fruit color isn't a foolproof method to identify a particular species from another, as berries come in several colors, from white to pink to dark red to deep purple, all of which might be on one tree. Since fruits don't ripen at the same time, harvest season can last for a few weeks. White mulberry fruits are white, of course, but they also come in colors ranging from pink to lavender. Ones with a rosy hue are the sweetest. Some are so sugary they taste like candy. Red mulberries start out red and are ripe when they turn deep purple. Confusing? Yes. So when they're red, they're not ripe. But frankly, I don't bother with differentiating one species from another, because whatever the variety, the berries are edible. Now that doesn't mean they all taste equally delicious. The quality of fruit varies from tree to tree. Sample before you pick. Some are bland, while others are unbelievably tasty. But don't consume unripe berries, as they may cause an upset stomach. The mature fruit of mulberries resembles blackberries. Mulberries are messy and sticky. They'll stain your fingers purple, as well as your clothing.
Ripe fruit drops at the slightest touch. Gather gently or you'll be rained on by hundreds of berries. To prevent this, lay a tarp on the ground to collect them. Bunches of fallen berries can be slippery, so watch your step.
Ripe berries are soft and easily damaged. Be careful how you store them. I transfer them from my collecting container to a glass one to avoid crushing. It's best to refrigerate and use them within a few days, since they don't keep well and spoil easily. Even though these fruits are common, Few utilize them except the local wildlife, who leave proof of their presence everywhere. When berries fall, they make a slippery mess on the ground or on top of cars. Also, they don't have a long shelf life, and their central stems don't come free easily. The stems. They're attached to the fruit, and who wants to remove them from each and every berry? Well, you don't have to, because they are edible. Although if I have time, I'll pick them off for aesthetic reasons. There are several ways to deal with excess berries. Freeze them. Place individual ones on parchment paper or on a tray in the freezer. After they harden, pack them in a container or make a berry and yogurt cutie. Blend squashed berries with honey, a dash of vanilla, and yogurt. Wear an apron when crushing the berries. Fill ice cube trays with the mix. Freeze and enjoy. On those hot summer days when everything is wilting, including me, I'll often grab some loose berries from the freezer for a cooling snack. Juice them. Since they're naturally juicy, put 2 cups berries to a half a cup water in a pot. Mash, simmer, and stir for about 20 minutes. To enhance their flavor, add a small amount of orange juice. Cool the mixture down and strain through several layers of cheesecloth. Squeeze to get every last drop. Feel free to double or triple these directions. Place the juice in regular-sized or mini ice cube trays. Once frozen, use them to enliven the taste of other fruit juices. Love the color change. Dry them. Before drying, put berries outside on a tray to allow the sun's UV rays to prevent bacteria from spoiling the fruit. Shoo away pesky insects. Then bring them inside to dry. There are several ways to do this. The best is to use a dehydrator, which I don't have. Other possibilities are air drying, which takes a week or longer, or putting them in an oven set on the lowest temperature. Another, and perhaps the easiest option, is to purchase some dried ones in a local store or online and use them to replace raisins in recipes. In late winter, when all my frozen mulberries have been used, I make this sweet treat with dried berries. First, soften some berries in water for about 20 minutes. Pour off the water and save to add to smoothies or cereal. Mash the berries. Add ground almonds or other nuts. Form into small ovals. These are sticky. And roll them in coconut bits. Put in the fridge to harden them. All mulberries, especially dried white ones, are excellent sources of resveratrol, a compound with antioxidant and anti-cancer properties. This is also found in red wine, but if you don't drink alcohol, these berries might be just what the doctor ordered. The simplest thing to do is eat the berries right off the tree. But they also can be used as an ingredient in jams, jellies, wines, pies, or muffins like these.
Making mulberry muffins is another way to utilize extra berries. I use dark ones since their color is visually appealing. To make these, I've melted 1/4 cup butter and added a 1/2 cup sugar into the mix. Then I'm going to add 1 egg that I've beaten, along with 1 teaspoon vanilla and 1 cup of milk or milk alternative, and stir. Then I'm going to stir in 2 cups of flour plus 2 teaspoons baking powder. After this is mixed, I'll add in 2/3 of a cup destemmed crushed mulberries. I've filled the muffin tins 2/3 full with the batter, and now I'm going to cook them in an oven at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Actually, I'm going to cook the larger ones for that time. The little mini ones probably will take 15 minutes. The best way to do it is to just check them to see if they're brown.
Even though you won't find a mulberry tree as spectacular as this one, painted by Vincent van Gogh, you can still feast on delicious berries from more modest-looking trees in your area.